The story begins on the streets where a fair is being held, and a 14-year-old boy named Wool is satisfied with what he's gathered. Now that he has what he needs, he has to find somewhere to sleep for the night. He is an orphan who aimlessly roams the land. As he makes his way out of the fair, he runs into a giant, mysterious man. He is afraid, as he feels threatened. His intuition is correct as he wakes up in the darkness. There isn't a single ray of light. He tries to move, but he quickly realizes he can't. He can't muster any strength to get up. He starts shedding tears as he tries to figure out how he ended up in this situation. All he can remember was his encounter with that mysterious man earlier. He remembers the man saying he looks useful. Our boy realizes he must have something to do with why he's there. He doesn't recall making any enemies, so he concludes the man must have some sort of goal. He is unsure how much time has passed, so he tests his memory. Though he was an orphan, he can remember his age, his name, and both his parents' names. At this point, he's been in the dark so long that he doesn't even know if he's awake, and he begins to cry. He is scared and lonely, and doesn't know how much longer he'll have to suffer. He hasn't even had anything to eat and starts to believe he will either die of starvation or insanity. He wonders if the man's plan was for him to die of starvation. He starts crying again, as he feels he has not done anything to deserve this torture. But suddenly, he gets a sensation in his hand, and he can't believe it. He finally has some movement and is also having an easier time breathing. His bodily senses are returning. He can smell the damp air and feel the cold ground. This leads him to conclude he's underground, and off in the distance, he can hear water. He tries to gather the strength to move his body to drink water. He fights through the paralysis and begins crawling toward the water he hears. He knows he has to fight to survive. He finds his inner strength and keeps crawling. He finally reaches a stone wall where he hears the water coming from. A small stream of water is coming from the wall, and Wool drinks what he can. However, he still can't see in the dark and accidentally slices his finger on one of the rocks. Feeling defeated, he falls to the ground and passes out. He wakes up as he lies on the ground and senses someone's presence. The guy questions why he is fighting so hard to survive, asking what is so great about his life that he struggles so much and suggesting that he should just give up. It says if he gives up, he will be at peace by getting free from suffering for once and for all. This gets Wool thinking about whether he'll be at peace if he just let it all go, but he doesn't think so. He's going to survive and does not let this idea sink in. The stranger tries to tell him he's just wasting his strength, but Wool knows he won't be at peace if he dies like this. He wants revenge on the one who did this to him without any reason. Our hero decides to fight to stay alive, and it will all be worth it once he gets his revenge. The guy asks if he wants revenge, and Wool shouts yes. The stranger suddenly disappears, and Wool couldn't sense that it was a hallucination of himself. His conscience succeeded, as our boy just needed a little push to not give up. He manages to sit upright and approaches the stone wall again. He feels the moss on the wall grown by the underground water and tries to eat it without any idea if they are edible or not. However, he goes for it, and as expected, the moss tastes terrible. But he doesn't feel sick from it, so he goes back to eating more to feed this hungry body and survive. Our boy is now more than determined to do whatever it takes to survive. He needs to keep reminding himself so he doesn't quit. Wool now has the energy to stand and tries walking around the room. According to his measurements, his space is roughly 9 square meters. As he paces the room, he hears an iron door opening. The sudden sharp beam of light nearly blinded him. However, he doesn't sit back and walk towards it, wondering if it is some sort of help. But he sees a shadow of someone leaving him food, and immediately closes the opening. Wool smells the food and rushes to it. Although he can't see it, he smells the rotten fish, pork, and tea leaves. He received a few variations of leftovers and guesses there's more than one person involved. Just the 5 different leftover dishes and room space idea give our hero a vague estimate that 5 managers must be holding this place, and more than 5 people must be trapped along with him for a specific purpose. He just can't figure out why, but he can't hold off any longer and devours his plate of food. He'd much rather be eating scraps than that moss he had earlier. Now that he's done eating, he has to devise a plan. 4 months have passed, and he has taken this time to increase his strength. They provide him with food once a day and never say a word. He has yet to see a glimpse of a possible escape. He thinks he will go insane in a situation like this, but his eyes are beginning to adapt to the darkness. He can now see fragments of the pitch-black space around him. Sometimes he wishes he couldn't, as he finds he doesn't live there alone. He notices something from the corner of his eye and assumes it's just more insects, but little did he know it was actually a snake. The snake gets a hold of Wool's arm and begins hissing. The snake bites into his arm without giving our boy a chance to defend himself. Wool shrieks in pain as the venom stings his flesh. His whole body is beginning to feel like it's on fire. The pain is unbearable, but all Wool can do is lie on the ground and suffer the poison running into his blood. Wool's meal arrives, and our boy grabs the bowl as he hopes eating will replenish some of his health. He refuses to let himself die no matter what. Time passes, and Wool is faced with the snake once again. He feels his body change during the detoxifying process. One improvement he noticed was his vision. He can now see things in front of him more clearly. Wall sticks his hand toward the hissing snake, believing the snake bite may have made him stronger. He's heard of stories like these before. He hopes to become resistant to the snake's venom and potentially gain a weapon, so he allows the snake to bite him again. He feels like his body is on fire, and this time, his entire arm gets swollen red. The guy wonders if he has done the right thing, but he notices the pain isn't as bad as the first time. He stares into the eyes of the snake as its eyes have degenerated from the darkness. Though its eyes are bright, it's an exceptional hunter that uses its stealth to consume its prey, sometimes even using sound to incapacitate its prey. Though they get a bad reptile, snakes are not greedy. After they finish their meal, they don't make the mistake of chasing their prey away by intimidating them. The snake slithers away, leaving him with a new attribute of poison resistance. Suddenly, the ground begins to shake, and Wool can't believe what's happening. He observes that the door has opened. He rushes to the door and sees more rooms down the hall, which are quite far away, so he has never heard a sound from them. He peeks into one of the rooms and gets a big whiff of rotting flesh. He analyzes the body and assumes the person is around his age. He also wonders if it's the same for the other rooms. He makes his way down the hall and faces the door again. The handles and bolts were removed, but he can open the doors. On the other side of the door, he sees a boy and a girl who seem estranged. Without saying a word, he walks past them and searches through the additional rooms. He sees more corpses, and the girl finally asks who Wool is. She asks him where he came from as she can't see who Wool is in the dark. Our boy